Crystal clear glass, solid ass construction, and illuminated reticles that literally harness the power of the goddamn sun. Today we're talking Trijicon ACOGs. They're also slightly radioactive or whatever, but I'm not a scientist. What is up, guys? My name is John with PewPewTactical.com, your definitive source for gun reviews, gear guides, and all things that go bang. Well, the term ACOG itself actually refers to a whole line of optics produced by Trijicon and not any one optic individually. What comes to mind when you hear the word ACOG is most likely the TA31 RCO. And realistically, it's also one of the most iconic models of rifle optic out there, due in no small part to the fact that they've been adopted by both the US Army and Marine Corps, and was included in the SOP-Mod Block 1 package, seeing extensive use in the global war on terror. For the unfamiliar, the vast majority of ACOGs are going to provide a fixed level of magnification through some really stellar glass, and most don't actually use batteries. Instead, they rely on a combination of either the radioactive decay of tritium or fiber optics to capture sunlight and illuminate your reticle. However, while all of that is cool and neat and interesting and fun, I'm sure you are all wondering how they actually stack up against the competition, considering the pretty hefty price tag all of these carry. Trijicon was kind enough to send us a couple of different ACOG models to play with and test out, and we decided to opt for some of the more interesting variants, considering it felt sort of boring to review a gun sight that the military has been using to clap dudes from afar for close to 2 decades at this point. First up, we've got the Trijicon TA02, which actually does utilize a single AA battery to illuminate the 223 reticle inside of the optic. It's actually the first Trijicon optic to allow the user to select a level of brightness themselves. Although not a massive problem, an occasional criticism of other ACOGs that use tritium or fiber optics to illuminate the reticle is that direct light or shadow on the optic can occasionally give you a mismatch in illumination compared to your environment. Obviously, being able to select that illum level yourself works around that. Right off the bat, you're going to notice that most models of ACOG have pretty shallow eye relief. Essentially, that means that you're going to need to find the right standoff distance between the optic's eye relief and the length of pull of your gun itself to be able to use this thing correctly. It gets a little bit weird for me. I actually run my carbine stocks all the way out, so you just kind of need to play with it and find that sweet spot. As a result, close-range target acquisition isn't super fast, but again, it's a 4x optic and that's not really what it's meant to be used for. That being said, the reticle is bright in daylight conditions, and the brightness adjustment knob has a super handy feature where each click between brightness levels actually turns the optic off. We actually prefer that setup as compared to a lot of other optics on the market where you might need to scroll all the way from 1 to 11 to get to your highest setting of brightness. The reticle itself is sort of the classic ACOG chevron, and it includes bullet drop calculations for 223 all the way out to 800 meters. The TA02 includes a thumbscrew Picatinny mount that'll mount directly to your gun's rail, though it can be removed if you need or want to mount it to an AR carry handle for whatever probably stupid reason. The optic also includes an RMR mount that actually sits a little bit further forward than what you're going to find on most other ACOGs, but it does give you the opportunity to mount a backup red dot for those close range shots when 4x is overkill. Trijicon also advertises the TA02 as being night vision compatible, though we'd suspect that's probably more for setups where you're going to mount something like a PVS-14 behind the optic itself, as trying to crane your neck over to aim through this thing when you're wearing nods sounds terrible. With an MSRP of about $1,500 or so, the TA02 is a bit brutal on the wallet, though thankfully there is a pretty clear step up in terms of both the clearness of the glass and overall construction quality that does come with that price tag, thankfully. Up next, we've got the super chunky TA648. It's a 6x rifle scope that utilizes both tritium and a fiber optic scrolly wheel thing to illuminate your reticle. Using the same type of chevron found in the TA02, the 648 is apparently specifically tuned to the ballistic trajectory of the issued M855 round, and indicates via a tiny A4 in the optic itself that it's meant to be paired with the 20-inch barrel of an M16A4. The illuminated reticle on the 648 is actually a little bit more dim than the rest of the ACOGs that we've got here, but it is still visible in bright conditions. You can actually scroll the fiber optics wheel completely upside down, and that's going to allow you to just utilize the tritium glow to illuminate your reticle, which is useful if you're shooting in darker conditions. That way the reticle itself is not going to be overpowering. But if you're shooting in anything close to bright midday sun, you definitely want to keep it completely opened up. Like I said, it's a little bit bit dim and you need that extra illumination from the fiber optic. It is worth noting that this is probably one of the heaviest optics that we've ever had the chance to play with, coming in at a quite thick 2 pounds 6 ounces. However, the optic's own weight does itself mitigate the already minimal recoil on our PSA AR, making follow-up shots while stationary quite nice considering the reticle doesn't move much. You've also got a massive amount of rail space on the top of the 648, enough to mount a full-size micro red dot on the optic if for whatever reason you want something a bit bigger than an RMR. The 648's reticle is also specifically designed to be used while aiming with both eyes open, which is known as the Bindon aiming concept, apparently named after the founder of Trijicon himself. While we've pretty much always been taught to aim with both eyes open no matter what optic we're using, it is a cool little bit of trivia and history. With an MSRP of approximately $3,000, the TA648 is obviously not going to be for everyone, considering the vast majority of us probably don't spend anywhere near that on our army of poverty pony AR-15s. But if you are inclined to pick up a fixed 6x rifle scope with a dope reticle and a level of bomb-proof construction that feels like you could beat someone to death with it, maybe take out another mortgage and grab one. One thing that's worth noting is because of how far back these optics generally sit, with the mounts that they come with from the factory, you may have a little bit of trouble accessing your charging handle. It's just a little bit kind of weird to get to when you have a massive optic sitting practically right on top of it. Next, we've got the TA11F, which is a 3.5x ACOG specifically tuned for the M193 cartridge. Again, you've got the same chevron reticle that we've seen in all of the other ACOGs thus far, but notably, the fiber optic sort of runs at a diagonal down the plane of the optic itself. If you compare that to the fiber optic on the 648, where it's sort of perpendicular to the rest of the scope, this feels like it picks up a lot more ambient light and in turn gives you a brighter reticle. It's about on par with the battery-powered TA02 in terms of overall brightness. There's actually not a ton to say about this individual model, and we're not entirely sure why you would want a 3.5x optic when the vast majority of ACOGs are 4x, but it does its job just fine. It's got just about the same eye relief as all of the other models above, with maybe just a smidge faster target acquisition speed considering the slight reduction in magnification. You've got your standard mounting brackets for an RMR adapter plate right at the back here as well, and we wish that we could show you what that looks like. However, our RMR unfortunately is permanently affixed to this Grey Ghost Glock slide because of some rounded out Allen screws. I don't want to talk about it. The TA11F comes in at close to $1,600, and realistically, it's pretty no-frills for an ACOG. However, a no-frills ACOG is still a pretty damn cool and high-quality optic. Lastly, we've got the TA44C. It's a 1.5x zoom tiny boy that sort of sits in a weird middle ground between a true rifle scope and a true red dot. Honestly, the 44C is kind of out there. The green reticle and fiber optic are really cool and way brighter and clearer than any other optics with green reticles that we've fired, but it's still an ACOG and it has an ACOG's eye relief. For us, this feels a bit odd, as the 1.5x zoom and super low profile for an ACOG mean that it's obviously intended more for fast target acquisition and close-up shots. But the fact that you're not going to have a clear view through the optic unless your eyes are in the exact right spot means that it doesn't do that job quite as well as your standard holographic or red dot sight in our opinions. We also mounted the 44C on a bow bro throw lever mount, which gives it just enough height to be able to be used comfortably on a standard AR flat top rail. While this is one of the lightest ACOGs around at just 4.9 ounces, we're not actually sure what you would use this for. Trijicon themselves say that it's for CQB teams or for competition shooting, but honestly, with an MSRP of $1,200, we would probably pass on the 44C. However, if any of you out there are using them, we would love to know exactly why we're wrong in the comment section below. So overall, are ACOGs worth the money? As with almost every optic review that we do, that's going to depend a lot on you and your level of personal investment in this hobby. If you've got the spare cash to burn and you're in the market for an optic with some really incredible glass, honestly, take a look at it, especially if you have the means to play around with one before you actually commit to buying it. It's really hard to do the level of workmanship on these optics justice, even with our views through the optics themselves. If you're more on the casual side, honestly, you can probably skip out on an ACOG and be totally fine. You can settle for something that is a little bit less expensive and is probably going to give you a similar level of performance for where you're at as a shooter. but these were a blast to play with and shoot through, and we hope that you guys all stick around for our ACOG torture test, because we're definitely going to explode one. Alright guys, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, as we've got lots more reviews on optics that we will eventually murder on the way. Once again, my name is John, and we will see you next time.
My ring chafes on my nipple.